Imagine fighting one of the most brutal regimes in history, not with soldiers, not with guns, but with something far more subtle: paper, ink, and numbers. Imagine you work inside the very government you're trying to destroy, and you use its own suffocating bureaucracy to save lives, leak its darkest secrets, and sabotage its plans from the inside out. This isn't a spy thriller. This is the true story of Hans von Dohnanyi, a quiet lawyer and accountant who fooled the Nazis from within. A man whose pen was more dangerous to Hitler than any weapon. A man who completely rewrote the meaning of courage. Hans von Dohnanyi was born in 1902, raised in an intellectual German family, surrounded by musicians, theologians, and thinkers. His world was one of reason, justice, and morality. It was demanded and ruthlessly enforced at every level. You either towed the line, or you disappeared. He would resist, not from the outside, not from the shadows of a foreign country, but from the very heart of the machine. He would fight them from his desk. Quietly, brilliantly, relentlessly. While the world watched Germany descend into darkness, Hans began building something extraordinary, something that could get him killed at any moment: a paper trail of truth. From his desk inside the ministry, Hans started a secret project that was an act of pure defiance. He began compiling a document he called the Chronicle of Shame. Page after meticulous page, he documented the regime's crimes in cold, hard detail: unlawful executions, the brutalization of civilians, illegal deportations, rampant corruption within the party, secret orders for political murders. He listed names, dates, and locations. He was creating an indestructible record of their evil, a ledger of their sins. And where did he hide this explosive file? In the most audacious place imaginable, inside the Ministry of Justice itself, right under their noses. He knew that one day, when the madness ended, the world would need proof. And this file, his chronicle, later became one of the single most important sources of evidence in the post-war trials that brought many Nazi leaders to justice. And for years, no one suspected the quiet, efficient man who wrote it. So, Dohnanyi decided to use that machine against itself. He was eventually transferred to the Abwehr, the German military intelligence agency. There he created a covert unit, perfectly disguised on paper as a special operations group. Its official purpose was vague: something about sensitive missions for the state. But its real purpose was to smuggle Jewish families to safety. Here's how his brilliant, simple, and incredibly risky plan worked. He would officially classify Jewish individuals, men, women, and children, as agents of the German military. He then wrote up elaborate, completely fake missions for them abroad. These mission files were filled with jargon, codes, and official-looking objectives. They looked exactly like any other top-secret operation. With these files approved, he then used government funds, the Nazis' own money, to pay for everything: their travel out of Germany, their accommodation in safe countries, their food, their clothing, and even forged identity documents to give them new lives. Everything was processed, stamped, and approved by the system because it followed the rules. It had the official seals. It had the right signatures. He turned their system of control into a pipeline for escape. As the war escalated and the regime's atrocities grew, Hans didn't work alone. He joined forces with a small, tightly knit circle of resistors deep within the German command structure. This group included his boss, Admiral Wilhelm Canaris, the head of the Abwehr, General Hans Oster, Canaris' deputy, and his own brother-in-law, the famous theologian Dietrich Bonhoeffer. They were a band of insiders, working in absolute secrecy. Together, they planned acts of sabotage, leaked crucial military intelligence to the Allies, and continued documenting war crimes. Within this conspiracy, Dohnanyi became the master strategist. He was the quiet engine behind the resistance, the man who turned their noble intentions into practical, executable plans. He was the one who handled the logistics, coordinated the funds, arranged the travel, created the false identities, and managed the diplomatic channels. He was the shadow behind the operations that subtly weakened the Nazi war machine from its core. It was an act of sustained, nerve-shattering courage that went on for years. But a secret that big can't be kept forever. In 1943, the Gestapo, the dreaded secret police, finally caught a thread. It wasn't a spy or an informant that gave them away. It was an accountant. A routine financial audit of the Abwehr's expenses exposed irregularities. Officials found the unusual payments, the funding for the fake missions, the forged signatures, the records of paid journeys for Jewish families who were supposed to be enemies of the state. The paper trail Dohnanyi had so cleverly created to save lives now led directly to him. The Gestapo arrested him. He was thrown into a cell. He was interrogated. He was tortured. He was isolated. The Gestapo used every brutal method they had to make him talk, to make him name his co-conspirators, to make him reveal the full extent of the resistance network. But Hans von Dohnanyi said nothing. He protected the people he had saved and the men he had worked with, right to the very end. He understood that his silence was his final act of resistance. For almost 2 years, he survived in the brutal conditions of Nazi prisons and concentration camps, holding on to his secrets. Then came April 1945. The war was just days from being over. The Allied armies were closing in on Berlin from all sides. The regime was collapsing. On April 9, 1945, just weeks before Germany's surrender, Hans von Dohnanyi was hanged at the Sachsenhausen concentration camp. He never got to see the world he fought for when the war finally ended. Investigators going through the rubble of the Third Reich found his chronicle of shame. The crimes he had so carefully documented became key evidence in the Nuremberg trials. His bureaucratic genius, his signatures, his stamps, his accounting tricks became a blueprint for how resistance can exist and even thrive in the darkest and most oppressive systems. He proved that you don't need a weapon to be a warrior today. Historians describe Hans von Dohnanyi as the conscience of the German resistance. They call him the man who used paperwork as a weapon, and the bureaucrat Hitler could never detect. He died before victory came, but his legacy of courage, integrity, and quiet defiance outlived the evil men who killed him. Dohnanyi's story teaches us that courage isn't always loud. It doesn't always storm the battlefield. Sometimes it whispers in a file. And sometimes it's just a simple signature on a form that saves a life. His story is a powerful testament to the impact one person can have, but he wasn't the only one fighting this hidden war. There was another man, working just a few rooms away in the same intelligence agency, who infiltrated the Nazi machine with a completely different, and arguably even more audacious, strategy. He played a double game that nearly brought down the entire Nazi intelligence network from the inside. If you want to hear that story and uncover more hidden figures of history, make sure you subscribe, because the real history of our world is often far more dramatic and inspiring than any fiction. Thanks for watching.